All right, we have about a minute left before things begin. Give me a thumbs up if my volume is okay, if you guys can hear us. All right, cool. I think the way we will conduct the Q&A session is by asking people to just raise their hand in the controls down at the bottom. There's a little raise hand icon, and that way it brings a queue up so we can actually let the first person who had raised their hand go ahead and then kind of work down through the queue. So I'm gonna keep that queue open so I can monitor questions, but I don't know that I want to get into doing the chat session and Q&A inside of text. So we'll probably just keep this mostly in Q&A verbally here. All right, and it is 7 o'clock, so we're going to begin on time. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
This is our first inaugural 2023 webinar for Harmony Turbines. Myself, Chris Moore, my wife, and COO, Cheryl.
Yeah.
We are here tonight to answer questions, to have dialogue with you, to discuss anything that you have as far as burning questions, and, you know, just helping you to perhaps find your way off of that fence, so to speak. We've got, at this moment, 4,220 start engine followers, and 1,255 of those have actually committed to investments. So it would be really nice to convert some of those followers to actual investors. So the hope of this evening's webinar would be to start that dialogue to help allow people to really just come through the process of any final questions they have, any final doubts, or anything that maybe they're on the fence about, helping them through that process. And it's meant to be an informal environment, but I would ask that everyone be respectful of each other and any questions that are asked here. We, of course, would reserve the right to kick anyone out who's causing a problem. And with that, I don't really think we've ever run into anyone who's been a problem,
No.
So I don't anticipate this being a problem this evening, but I'm excited to be here. I think my wife shares that sentiment as well. So I'll begin with a little tiny brief overview of how we began from a corporate standpoint. Harmony Turbines was just a small dream that really began in my basement and grew from that organic movement. It was formed in August of 2020, and we began our first crowdfunding right at that moment. So we decided to go with a equity crowdfunding strategy because we knew that the work ahead of us was longer and more drawn out than we could afford for something like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, where those guys really already have a widget developed. They're just looking to do pre-orders for that widget and get them out into the public by taking pre-orders. We knew our product would be farther down the road than that and more difficult to develop, so we needed to do something different, such as equity crowdfunding. We began our first equity crowdfunding back in 2020. That went from August to March of 2021. And that first one, we raised about 180K. In the second one, we raised again from August of 2021 until March of 2022. We raised about 220 during that second crowdfunding raise. This third crowdfunding raise is a much larger raise. So I'm not allowed to speak about specifics of this raise. I would encourage people to go to, I will put this in the chat, but obviously most of you know where our crowdfunding site is if you have specific questions about it. But there are things that we're actually not allowed to discuss because of SEC regulations. And if you ask a question that I can't answer or we can't answer, we'll just tell you that. But the current raise going on right now was for a much larger amount, and we're doing quite well with that raise. We're probably 3/4 of the way through that raise, And this money is intended to take us through the final phase of development to where we can move into a revenue positive state and finally not be just surviving off of investments, but actually starting to make revenue with the company. So this year is a big year for us. I will announce that we just made our first, well, not our first, our second hire of a full-time employee. So we just hired someone into our CNC machinist position, and we did our final interview today for our open engineering position. So we hope to make an offer on that perhaps tomorrow, maybe even tonight. I don't know.
We might.
So things are looking up in our little tiny company, and things are starting to grow. I won't say exponentially, but to us who have been 1 and 2 for a year here, it feels like exponential growth. Okay. I think at this point, I will kind of open the floor up and let's see where it goes organically. If you want to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and then we'll unmute you and let you ask away. Fire away with your question. So whoever has a question first, if no one asks, then I'll keep talking.
He can talk a lot. No worries. He can fill up the whole hour and a half if nobody has questions. Okay, good.
All right, so Susan, go ahead and see if you can unmute yourself and fire away.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. I'm calling from California, from the Central Valley. Very
Wonderful.
interested in what you have designed. I think it's terrific. What do you see in the future as what will be the main carrying turbine for general sales? Your smaller unit, the larger unit? I've looked at some of the videos that you put up.
Right. The way I explain it to people right now is we are launching with this 400-watt unit as our flagship product. So think of it like the very first Dyson vacuum cleaner that they came out with, or the Tesla Model S Roadster that they came out with. This is our first product that's going to be reaching the marketplace. So our 400-watt unit is going to be our flagship product. We know it's not as large as some people would have liked, but we want to remind people that if it performs as we're hoping, we're going to be scavenging power at the low end of the spectrum, as well as capturing all of the high-end spectrum of power that is ignored or disregarded by other turbines on the market. Now, remember, we are comparing ourselves to the other residential turbines on the market, not against the big, huge 300-foot tall turbines out there on the coast. But with that in mind, by the end of the month, a normal 400-watt propeller turbine that you can get right now on the market today may produce, I don't know, let's call it 10, 12, 14 kilowatt hours that you might get out of the entire month. With Harmony, you could potentially, and I'm not in any way saying this is a fact, because that's what our job is this entire year, to gather the data, but you could potentially gather 3, 4, 5, 6 times that amount of power with a system that's doing it right and gathering and scavenging the power at the low end and at the upper end that's being ignored by all these other turbines on the market. So even though it is just a 400-watt unit, the potential is there to gather a much, much larger net gain to your home throughout the entire month. So your kilowatt hours that would be produced, the hope is that it will be much larger in the end. So Susan, the flagship product will be this 400-watt unit. But as we move into a revenue state, I could see the more popular units perhaps being a 1 or a 2 kilowatt size for homes, simply because that's where everyone thinks that they need to be. With Harmony, we're hoping to start changing hearts and minds with this. And we may find that the 400-watt unit is performing just as good as, from a total kilowatts produced at the end of the month, it might be producing just as much as a 2 or 3 kilowatt propeller turbine that you buy currently on the market. So until we get our numbers, until we really see where we settle out, we can't know just how well Harmony is going to perform. And that's the big thing that we're very excited to see. Does that help?
Yes, my next question would be, what applications do you see for our rural and farming communities who maybe sit near the foothills where we do have a lot of wind that we need to harness.
Are you asking what application?
Yes.
As far as just
Down the road.
So power production in general would, for small farms or rural applications would be, I think what you're asking is what would you do with that power? How would you integrate it into your home? Am I understanding you correctly?
Well, yes, but for instance, we have dairy farms, but we also have a lot of very small family farms or rural communities who are desperately in need of renewable energy projects. I don't know if it's affected anybody else, but our PG&E bills out here are killing us.
So one of the big things that we've been saying for the past 2 years is, if people have a kilowatt hour charge of like 16 cents per kilowatt hour or higher, and we were really holding that up against our early number from, you may remember for the last year and a half, I was always saying our hope would be that we would sell these units for $2,500. Well, all of that got blown out of the water this past year. Over the last 14 months, prices have tripled for raw materials and metals and manufacturing, fabrication, everything has gone through the roof. So we've had to totally revise that. If anyone has looked at our pitch deck in the last month, we've actually revised our numbers on the pitch deck to now reflect a more realistic number of probably 5,000 to 5,500 for our units, what they would retail for. And again, this is just our best guess at this moment. But on the other side of that, like you just said, Susan, everyone's electric bill is going to start going up, which means as those electric bills go up, even though Harmony's price is higher, you're still at that status quo where we're hoping to have your payoff for the unit, the return on investment, be somewhere in the 5 to 7 year range if you have good wind on your property. And the application that we're looking for, that we're trying to help educate the public into understanding and embracing, would be not to do a grid tie inverter, but rather to have some kind of off-grid storage. The battery technology, supercapacitors, we're looking at solid state batteries and sodium ion batteries starting to come out. These technologies are literally just a year or two away from completion and hitting the commercial market. China just released the article that I read was like hundreds of thousands of units that they're releasing of their new sodium ion battery just a month ago. So we're starting to get a whole bunch of influx of all these newer, denser, more economical battery storage technologies that are going to begin to flood the market. And when they do, people are going to start looking around and saying, what's the best wind and what's the best solar that I can get to fill my new battery bank? And that's where Harmony wants to be ahead of that curve. We want to be out there in the market with a proven product that people start saying, yeah, Harmony is solid. It does what it is supposed to do, and it does it well. That's where we're looking to capture the hearts and minds of people and help change or cause a paradigm shift in the whole economy when it comes to small scale wind power generation, because right now the products on the market are, in my opinion, terrible. And we'd like to give people an option that finally makes sense.
Thank you. And
You're welcome.
My last final question would be, have you considered painting those green?
Green.
Yeah, we've considered any color you want. I think those are going to be some of the really cool options coming out later, not in the beginning, because we have to launch. We have to get our first flagship product out the door. So things will be limited in the beginning, as they always are. But yes, the options are there, tremendous options to silk screen and put all kinds of logoing or pictures or artwork on our turbines. And we know that. So we won't ignore that, I promise.
Our yard.
Yeah, to paint them green, just like the yard. That would be cool too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Brian, you are next in line.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah,
Where are you calling from, Brian?
I'm calling from Denver, Colorado.
Welcome.
And thank you. I've got a vacant lot next to my house that's at the top of like a 30-foot hill. So it seems like it would be an excellent spot to beta test for you. But my question is, you've turned a couple units over to some research institutions. Have you gotten any data back yet?
We have turned the first unit over to Bucknell University. About 2 weeks ago, I delivered that unit to them. So it's too early to have any data coming back from them. We are actually, my anticipation is that we'll beat them with our own data from our own unit. If you remember, if you would have watched some of the videos, you might see that we built 2 of those Mark II units. We had enough components to build 2 twin sisters, call it the Mark II units. One of them was going to Bucknell, which has been delivered 2 weeks ago. The other unit is halfway
Being assembled.
It's halfway put
Currently.
together. We were waiting on some materials. There was a backup of some materials that I was waiting on that finally arrived on Friday. So we've started machining the pieces. In fact, Cheryl put it out in the update that, you know, in between all the interviews, we still managed to get some parts machined. So when that unit is built and assembled, we're actually going to do a little bit shorter stand, because our next thing that we are manufacturing and prototyping, guys, is our Harmony Turbines generator. I've been very hush-hush about that, but that is the very next thing that we're going to start our build on, because once we have that coupled to the bottom of our turbine, we will now be able to take it out on the road and begin gathering data. So I would anticipate, Brian, that we'll beat Bucknell to their data. Their data will supplement what we're getting. It'll help to corroborate our data. It'll help to validify and validate what we're doing. But it could be, realistically, I mean, these are college students and grad students doing the work, but it could be several months before they're really ready to start publishing or releasing that data. They may unofficially give me feedback on how things are going and what they're doing, but I don't want to preemptively start putting stuff out that they're not comfortable with until they're ready.
I see. And then additionally, the generator itself, is that, I assume it's enclosed. How big of a enclosure, or what are the approximate dimensions of it?
The first one that we're making, you know, the first iteration of our generator is going to be probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 inches in diameter. And I would guess maybe 10 inches tall. So it's going to be like more of a pancake shape to it than your traditional hot dog type motors and generators that are out there, because this is an axial flux generator. So anyone who's been doing research on axial flux motors knows that they're more of a pancake shape rather than a hot dog shape. I'm thinking somewhere for a starting diameter of like 18 inches by, 10 or 12 inches tall. But we will work on iterating that and streamlining it as we go through. Just like with Harmony, we're already designing the Mark III prototype at this time of our turbine. So we'll go through the exact same iterative steps with our generator, and we'll be punching through, version after version of that as we streamline and work on, tailoring it to exactly what our needs are.
I see. And then lastly, the loads on a ground system.
Mm-hmm.
Have you figured, I guess, how deep a post would need to be, or what sort of anchoring you would need?
Originally, my friend owns Superior Sign down in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, and they've been doing sign work for the past 50 years. He inherited the company from someone that did it before him. The pads that we would need for the wind shear and wind loads in our area up to 100-mile-an-hour winds are nothing exorbitant, nothing that would be scary to any homeowner. He had spoken to me about pads that would be like 4 feet in diameter, 6 feet in diameter, just 3 or 4 inches thick, and having some ground posts going into the ground that you would do with either sonotube or something like that. He said you shouldn't have any problem with this. So although we don't have final numbers on that, we'll put it out there saying it's not going to be anything scary or crazy. You're not going to have to drill 10 feet down and 20 feet wide or anything like that. It'll be just like a normal sign if you would have a commercial sign out on your property or something. It would be a pad similar to that you would put down.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for developing this, and continued success. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, Vicky and Mike. I think you're muted there, Mike.
There we go. Got to find it. Anyhow, yeah, just a couple of questions. Yes, answered the one about the school pretty much. Does it have a generator attached to it already?
They did not want a generator on their unit because they're hooking it up to a pony brake or resistance brake. They're going to be doing dynamometer testing, and our generator would have actually messed that testing up. It would have interfered with the data that they're gathering. So it helped us because we didn't need to build the generator to deliver that unit to them. And it gives us the time to then put our unit together and now start working on the generator for our testing here.
Right. So what's the min-max for wind load?
How
much do you need to start and stop? You know, what kind of wind speeds will it start or it gets too much?
1 mile an hour wind, it begins spinning. Okay. So it's amazing. The generator that we have that we're going to be coupling with it literally starts with no load, and it doesn't do it through a charge controller. It's through its organic functionality of those variable air gap plates.
Okay.
So we can start spinning in 1 mile an hour. As to what RPM or what wind speed we will start having power production, we'll let you know as soon as we start getting that exciting data. My guess would be we're going to come in lower than your propeller type turbines because those things need 6 to 8 miles an hour to begin producing. I think we're going to be producing probably something, it won't be a lot, but something in the like 4 mile an hour range. The high end is a loaded question because obviously the whole design point of Harmony is that it can just keep furling in to whatever degree it needs, but it never has to stop spinning. So our rated wind speed, our target is going to be 25 miles per hour to achieve its rated 400 watt output. But our generator could easily, we could engineer the generator to be a 3 kilowatt generator. We're going to try and find a happy balance so that we're not overstressing the components in the 400 watt unit or whatever. But my goal would be to have this puppy producing as much power as it can safely produce. Even though it's a 400 watt unit, we could end up topping out at 1200 watts or something like that. And because of our furling technology, instead of our power curve going up and then dropping off like other wind turbines on the market have to do, ours would go up and then it would just level out and just hold, because all we're doing is furling in. We're not doing any braking, we're not doing any dump load, we're not doing any resistance braking at all, and we're not playing any tricks with a charge controller to dump any power into large resistors or anything like that either. So just by controlling our diameter and our exposure to the wind, we would be controlling how much power is delivered to that generator.
Yeah. We had a study here. What about gusting? Because we get a lot of gusts, and I know that can be a problem. I mean, how fast you furl, unfurl, and so on.
The furling time from fully opened to fully closed right now is about 30 seconds, 35 seconds. So really, no gust that I've ever seen comes from 0 to 60. Right. It's usually a gradual thing. So you will probably, by the time you're getting into violent winds where it's gusting and stuff, you'll already be some degree of furled at that point. So yeah. I don't foresee much of a problem with, where we're just open and happily spinning in a 15 mile an hour wind and boom, you get hit by a 45 mile an hour wind. It just, the mechanics of that out in Mother Nature don't really happen. Now, if you're next to a artillery range where they're dropping bombs, that might be a different mechanic.
No, out in a gorge, we get a lot of wind, but yeah. Okay. Well, that pretty much answers that then.
Yeah. And the other thing about Harmony is it is a large flywheel. People talk to me all the time about, oh, well, you could do this, you could do that, you could make it lighter with carbon fiber or hemp reinforced plastics or this and that. What about using canvas over, oilcloth? And I'm like, guys, look, in the end, we're going to need to add a flywheel to it if we make it any lighter. So Harmony is the perfect synergy of, rotating solid
mass.
well-engineered components working together in harmony, for lack of a better word, to make a beautiful flywheel that is evening out those gusts, those bursts of air, and you're getting that flywheel effect, which is advantageous to a wind turbine in the end anyway. So I don't necessarily want to make it much lighter than it already is. Maybe we'll make the frame a little lighter, but the spinning components, right now, I'm not joking. You guys have seen it. You can start it with, just the push of your pinky. I mean, the fan next to me on low power, and it starts spinning.
What about ice?
That'll be down the road. We will definitely be looking at cold climate models that have resistance heating in them and stuff like that for the colder Arctic regions and Alaska and Canada, because it's a huge, great wind region. We don't have that in our first model. So our first flagship model, we're going to be careful with where we have them deployed, and we're going to make sure that the first customers know this is not designed to handle the snow and ice just yet, because we haven't had the time to release models yet that would have resistance heating built into them, but that is in the plans.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Ralph.
Okay, well, good session. You just answered my question. Carbon fiber. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, we are definitely looking at all types of composite materials and newer, I don't want to say meta materials, but these would be things, Ralph, down the road as we move into higher volumes of production and larger groups who have already been in contact us in droves. We're kind of holding them off right now. We're saying, just let us get through this development, let us get through our initial testing, and then we'll talk to you about making larger units, or units that are more suited for the boating or fishing community. Or we've even been contacted by cruise ships, cruise ship lines that want to put our units on them, and yacht and catamaran manufacturers. So we'll definitely be looking at other more exotic materials to help with, weight and size and stability, and also resistance to salt water, things like that. But for now, we're going to continue down the path with our, just the aluminum units for our flagship products, for our first units. Okay. Harold, we'll go ahead and move on to you. Thank you, Ralph.
All right. Good evening. I just wanted to ask, when will you deploy prototypes in the wild and have it be spinning 24/7 with all the variables that it's going to encounter? And then my biggest concern would be grit that gets into the mechanism. And if especially if you're in Arizona or something, and if something grits it up, is that going to be the end of the product?
Right. So the first units that I could see being introduced to the wild, as you say, will probably be our Mark IV units. So we are, right now, I only made 2 of the Mark IIs, and I do not ever want anyone to have them because they're terrible for, it's like you're putting it together, you're like, man, who,
sell it, Dave.
yeah, right. Hey, I'm nothing but, if not honest, right? But you're putting it together, you're like, man, who designed this? Guys, we've already built about 45 design changes, improvements into the Mark III unit, if you can believe that, already. And we've only just begun designing the Mark III unit. So from things that we've already learned that we don't like, that I want to change, that I want to improve between the Mark II and the Mark III, 45 design changes already. So my guess is that Mark III is going to be heads and tails above the Mark II unit. And I'm not going to be sitting there saying, man, who designed this crazy thing? It's going to be something I'm actually proud of. But I want to take it one step more than that. And I would say probably our Mark IV units would be where we start getting them out into the wild, where we're even thinking of holding little like lotteries or whatever, where people can, some of our investors can kind of say, hey, I'd really love to have a unit. We'll have them submit a small essay or something to justify why they feel their site would be a good site. So probably by the Mark IV units, we would start seeing them actually out in the hands of some of our early investors and some of our bigger supporters. I don't know that that would be real far down the road, probably 6 to 8 months from now, because we are more than likely not even going to make the Mark III unit, but we will skip over from what we've learned in the Mark II. We're designing the Mark III right now. We will probably produce a number of the Mark IV units that we could actually put out into the wild. I haven't yet decided whether we're going to do any Mark IVs that would be released to any of our client sites or partner sites or anything like that. We'll probably reserve one of the Mark III just in case Bucknell needs a replacement of their unit or something. But 6 to 8 months, I could see Mark IV units actually hitting some testing.
And then
Did that answer your question
yes,
there?
yes.
Okay.
And then the grit issue.
Oh, the grit issue. I'm sorry. The smaller grit, sand, things like that. Yeah, until we really see how that's interfering or getting into the mechanism, I can't really speak to it. The gearing is made as large as we can make it and still keep it feasible. So that should minimize the grit to a very large degree. And the way the scoops and the furling mechanism is designed, it should keep it out of any of the sensitive areas down below. So really the only place it could become a problem would be up in the scoops themselves. And you know, I'm not going to speak to what the future holds for that testing, but you know, you're not going to want to put this someplace where you're constantly getting sand and debris or trees or leaves or anything blowing into it. It's a wind turbine, so you know, you're going to want to put it in a place where it's more or less protected or not getting that stuff. That's what testing is for. So Harold, if you have a site like that, we may look at deploying one to your location. If you've got a place that has great wind, but you know, sandy, gritty substrate that blows in the air a lot of times, yeah, we need to know those things.
Yeah. No, I'm just concerned more like just regular everyday grit. I mean, I don't have a desert area, but I mean, I just know that in Los Angeles, you just never know what we catch.
Right. Again, I can't speak to what the future holds and what that testing will yield, but I don't think from an engineering standpoint and the size of the gears, the robustness of the gears, I don't think that normal everyday detritus and stuff that's just blowing around in the air is really going to hurt it. Heavy sand and stuff like that could certainly be an issue. So, you know, we will have to do testing to find that out and see what really, if we need a different type of model for those type of environments or something. But I don't think regular, you know, households, homes in rural Pennsylvania or rural Texas or rural Utah or whatever, I don't think your normal homes are going to have much that they have to worry about as far as grit getting in it to disrupt anything.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
So we have 2 questions that came in through chat
Okay.
while they were all.
Okay, go ahead. You want to read them?
Sure. So we have Gary who's asking, well, first of all, when you were talking about batteries
Mhm.
with Susan at the beginning, Ray had commented about
The
sorry,
vanadium flow batteries.
right,
I saw
I didn't
that.
know if
Mhm.
you wanted to comment about that or
No,
I
it's
didn't want to ignore it.
it's just another type of new technology that's coming out for some amazing gains in both power density and cost effectiveness. So I look forward to all of those wonderful gains and look to capitalize on it as we partner with those groups doing power walls or power bank installations that we can couple with their products. Bronco Power Boost is one of the groups that's looking to partner with us and have been in contact with us for now 6 months. And they're excited as can be about our product because they want to put our product with their product and begin to offer a suite of solutions for people.
Mm-hmm.
So yes.
Okay. So Gary is asking, do you see any cost-saving measures that can potentially lower the target selling price of $5,500?
Sure. Economies of scale and different materials and different manufacturing techniques. There's all kinds of things that can lower an initial product launch price down to, you know, perhaps a 20% savings, a 30% savings. But until we get there, number one, prices may change even now over the next 12 months as we're still testing. So for me to say, yes, we're going to do this, this, and this, and the price is going to drop down to $4,000 would be ludicrous. I could never say that. What we will say, and what we have always said, is that we will do everything in our power to make these as affordable as possible. We need to make enough money in the company that we can stay afloat, that we can continue hiring people, buying equipment, producing turbines, and keep everything moving, keep the gears turning, so to speak. But we're not in this to become multimillionaires off of everyone else that we're overcharging for our product. Our goal from the get-go has been to get this out to the public in mass. And to do that, we have to make as many sacrifices as we can on our cost to keep the cost down low and affordable so that we can achieve the end goal of getting it out there to as many places as possible. So, Gary, we're going to do everything we can to keep that price as reasonable as possible, I promise. And everything we've done so far should hopefully tell you and all of our investors that we're doing that. I mean, we took salary cuts when we came to work here full time. We're doing everything we can to make the most out of every single dollar that we spend. It's crazy how far we've stretched our tiny little budget that we've had at Harmony. This fundraising round that we're in right now is the first real money that we've had injected into the company, and we've made it this far on a shoestring budget. So we're not about to suddenly go out and buy brand new cars and everything like that. We're in it for the environment, not for a get rich quick scheme here.
Okay, one more question before we get back to your queue. It's from Derek. He says, do you have a feel for how high would be ideal to mount the Harmony units? When you conceptualize a bigger unit, do you have a feel for how much bigger it would need to be physically?
So really the goal here is, as we've always said, that these units would just finally make sense for people. We don't want people out there sticking them, feeling like they have to put them up on an 80-foot tall pole. Yes. Is the wind better 80 feet up in the air? Sure. Is it realistic for every homeowner to build an 80-foot tower and put their Harmony turbine or any turbine on it? No, absolutely not. So to that end, we would say put it as high as you're comfortable putting it and no higher. It's really, as long as you're up off the ground 8 feet so you don't whack someone in the head with it as it's spinning, put it 8 feet off the ground. The wind is here, guys. The wind is all around us. It's stronger the higher you go, but there's, it's like, what makes sense and where does the cost, break point really, it gets crazy. I don't want to have to climb up an 80-foot pole just to grease some bearings or something like that. So we're going to look at options that give, once we have underwriting laboratory certification and things like that, where people could literally mount it right on their home or on their garage or on their shed or on a pole near their home. Initially, we're going to just be doing ground mounted because that's simple. It's easy. They just pour a concrete slab and they've got it, done. But as we get into other models and other options that people can buy, the options are going to be really sky's the limit. So how high do we foresee them or want them to be? As high as you're comfortable putting them. Certainly not at ground level where you're going to be whacking someone in the head. The spinning parts all have to be at least 8 or 9 or 10 feet off the ground, I would say. But beyond that, I don't know that people are going to need to get crazy with their height requirements.
As long as you're getting wind, as low as you are, if you're getting wind.
Yeah, that's the whole problem right now, why wind is unattractive to the current marketplace, because the products on the market right now are like, oh, you've got to put it 60 feet in the air or 80 feet in the air, and here's a $38,000 quote for us to do this for you. And people are like, man, I can't afford that. It's kind of crazy what the options are out there. So we're trying to change that. We're trying to cause this paradigm shift in the world at large and say, look, there's a better way to do wind, and here's how. So we don't have all of the answers, but we hope we have a lot of the answers that people are looking for. Was there a second part to that?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-oh.
There was.
You're fired.
Sorry, Derek.
And Gary, thank you for your question last time. Sorry about that.
When you conceptualize a bigger unit, do you have a feel for how much bigger it would need to be physically?
We have had discussions with groups that were looking to upscale Harmony for industrial purposes. I can see Harmony getting all the way up into the 100 kilowatt size. I don't see it getting much larger than that, just because the engineering behind how you would do those scoops at a larger scale, like a megawatt scale or something, would be ridiculous. So I'd say out on the coast, out in like coastal mounted units that are for industrial purposes, I could certainly see them getting into the 100 kilowatt size range. And, you know, those might be 100, 120 feet tall by, you know, roughly 100 feet wide when they're fully opened. But it's not going to be these behemoth 300, 400 foot things out there on the coast. So you'd have 10 Harmony units that are making the same power equivalent of one of these big, huge ones. But you've got redundancy now, because instead of something happening to that one catching on fire or whatever, and now you've lost 6 megawatts of power production, you've got 10 Harmony units out there. So the redundancy is better. You've got easier installation costs where you're not going up 300 feet in the air on cranes and stuff like that, but just 100 feet, you can deploy them closer together. The Oxford University study about the clustering effect of wind turbines helping each other with a 15% increase, all kinds of great things that could come of using our units in a more industrialized grid setting where you've got small numbers of these clustered together. So I'd say probably 100 kilowatts would be my upper end of what I envision Harmony realistically being. Okay.
I think that answered that question.
All right,
back
cool.
To the queue.
All right. And that was
Derek.
Derek. Thank you, Derek. Okay, Wing.
Hello, Chris.
Hello.
Thanks for the webinar. I am a developer in Windsor, in Canada. I'm not in Japan, okay?
Yes.
I'm an eco developer in Windsor. We are one of those rare species in the area that advocate for net zero development. So apart from using solar and geothermal in our past projects, or those that we are planning, I was drawn to your innovative design, this Harmony turbines. Incidentally, that I see a lot of wisdom in your design and a lot of scalability in your prototype. So my question today is, we are building a lot of condos, not very high, because Windsor is not a Toronto or New York. We build 6-story, 7-story, maybe our highest one will be 16 stories. So I am contemplating on the employment of a hybrid system. We have geothermal for sure. They will provide the heating and cooling for most of the units already. They will cut down on the energy demand to a great extent. So solar alone cannot supply all the energy that I need for the units. It's good for the public areas, but not for individual units. But when I see the Harmony turbines in motion, then I think, hey, probably if I can use a hybrid, design, probably I can be going a little bit closer to my net zero vision, that's what I'm trying to do for all my developments, to cut down the carbon footprint and so on. So I know that you're at a very preliminary stage of development, right? But I see great potential in what you are doing, and I like the idea that of your design. So I'm just wondering how. Right now, I know you're concentrating on the 400 watts model, but
Yes.
Do you see any chance that I'll put all these turbines, on the rooftop, like 6-story, 10-story, 16-story, and Windsor is a place is good for wind. That's why it's called Windsor, right?
Yes.
I'm just kidding. but Windsor have 11 months of wind blowing from the west all the time. So as long as nothing blocks the climatic conditions there, I will have a good wind speed, all year round. So particularly when your turbine can move it with only 1 mile per hour, I think we have the average about 16 or 20 kilomiles per hour in Windsor. So I think it's a good ground for the application of wind turbine, not as solely to fuel all the units, but with the geothermal, the solar, and wind, I believe my dream of trying to build net zero developments are a little bit closer. But I just wonder whether how much or how far away is your product going into this kind of a larger scale development, like on a condos. We have 60 units, like for instance, on a 7 on like our typical units are about 60 units on 6 stories, 7 stories. So I don't anticipate I have to put 20 or 30 turbines there. I don't need probably I'll need maybe 5 or 6. I mean, as long as you can produce, say, about 100 kilowatts hours or 1,000 kilowatt hours per day for me, I think the units themselves, I'm not talking about the public area, the common elements, but probably most of my household users will be able to benefit from the combined power generated by the wind and solar. So, but I don't know how far you see your product will go to that stage, commercial application on condos.
We would love our units to be in commercial applications like that. We've been in contact over the last year with probably 8 to 10 different developers who have called us, from large scale entire green community build outs and deployments to individual developers putting them on brand new green homes, individual homes, building them right into the infrastructure of the home and selling them right along with the price tag of the home. Groups from Florida and the Panhandle of Texas and Illinois contacting us for doing revitalization in these areas. So on the high-rise buildings and buildings that are, even 16, 17 stories as you're speaking, the corners of the building as you go up in your high-rise, as you're going up, you've got 4 corners on the building that you could literally come out off of the corner and have Harmony turbines spinning at every 20-foot interval or something like that. So you could literally have like 6 or 7 turbines on a corner of the building, as well as on the tops of the buildings, because that funneling effect that happens in cities where the wind is squeezed in between the buildings helps to increase velocities. So it's the same effect that happens in the clustering effect when you have the multiple turbines clustered together. It squeezes and that wall effect takes shape. So we will be working with companies looking to develop larger units. I could see these being like 5 and 6 kilowatt units that you would deploy for an application like you're talking about, where you're going to need 100 or 200 thousand kilowatt hours throughout the year that you need for your unit. But they're going to be units suited and designed for high-rise buildings, for on top of the buildings and on the corners of the buildings, things like that. We would absolutely love that, because you are helping to decentralize power generation by doing a model that you're talking about. You're getting rid of the dependency on the grid, or a large majority of it, and you are now self-sufficient in your condo or in your high-rise building. And that's beautiful. We want to endorse that. We want that technology to get out there and start propagating throughout the world.
I'm sure I'll be very willing, once you get to that stage, I will use my condo buildings for your test site.
Well, thank you. You may not believe this, and I've told people this for the past year, but just last week we turned down a $250,000 order, a pre-order on our wind turbines. We have people calling us. I'm not joking to tell you guys, we've turned down $1.5 million in pre-orders of our turbines this past year, because people are so excited to have Harmony. They're wanting to literally hand us their money and say, just when you get it done, you get it done. I just want to have my order on the books. And I tell them, no, we cannot take your money right now. It's too early. We need to be a little further down the development road before we start opening up those orders to the public. And I would say we're getting there this year as quickly and efficiently as we can. I mean, finally hiring the help that we need, getting some of the extra equipment we need. The stars are aligning and things are moving in the right direction. The synchronicity is happening.
Wonderful. And the final question will be a short one. Right now, you're doing this crowdfunding. It's a preferred shares, right?
It's
preferred shares, all right? Is that right? The
Yes,
shares
preferred stock. Yes, preferred stock.
Preferred stocks. You know, when will you consider, you know, us coming in as common stock shareholders?
Probably not. And
No.
Wing, the reason for that is if you do common stock shares, you've got to give voting rights. And even though you would have 1,000 minority shareholders, but you would then have to send out forms to each and every one of them to get their vote, even though their vote wouldn't matter because we still hold 77% of the company. So their vote really wouldn't, in the long run, matter. It creates a ton of minutia and a lot of red tape that is unnecessary. So we did preferred stock to keep from having that be a problem. So we don't even have to send out, you know, notification to people to make a simple decision.
I know.
It literally was to keep it simple. So if people say, oh, I'm not getting into your company because you only have preferred stock, well, I'm sorry then. You know, there's plenty of other companies out there to invest in. We didn't do it to be mean or because we're trying to control something. We did it to keep the red tape out of the system so that we can keep moving forward with what's necessary. In the end, that's really the only material difference between common stock and preferred stock in our company is the voting right.
I see. I get it. I'm in this business anyway. So thank you for your answer. I think you're very honest with us. Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank
you.
you.
We have nothing to
Thank you so
hide.
much.
We never have, and we won't.
Yeah.
We're not built that way.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a number of questions that
Okay.
have been rolling in.
All right. Thank you, Wing.
Okay, so Gary was asking if Bucknell was going to do the clustering study because you had started talking about the clustering,
Right.
and I did comment in here that Penn State is doing that, but I thought maybe we could touch real quick on the.
No, go ahead.
me?
My throat's sore. I'm talking
You
too
need
much.
a break.
Yeah.
So for anyone who hasn't read up on our the universities that we're partnered with, we have Bucknell and Penn State and Northumbria University from the UK. So Bucknell, it has our turbine on the corner of their building right now, and they'll be setting that up for testing with their students throughout the spring semester. They are also doing wind tunnel testing to, they're looking at furling states, if I remember correctly. They're looking at furling states. So at certain wind speeds, what is the most efficient furling state to have the scoops open or closed? Because that will vary as winds increase. Harmony may not be most effective wide open because it's spinning too quick, but you don't want it all the way closed because then you're not taking advantage of the winds. You want it somewhere in the middle. There's like sweet spots. So Bucknell is finding our sweet spots or assisting with finding that information. Penn State is looking at the clustering. They're using a water tank and they're looking at clustering formations to see how far apart, what configuration would work best to streamline the wind that's flowing through there. So that's what they're focusing on. And Northumbria University is doing the CFD, which is computerized fluid dynamics.
Computational fluid
dynamics. Sorry. Yeah. So they're doing CFD analysis for us. They're looking at our scoop design, like the actual shape of the scoops, and to see maybe if there's
helping to optimize it.
Right. So they're looking at that. So we have those three universities. All three of them got approved for the funding that they had requested from their various government authorities. So they are all working with us, working on these projects. So that's the breakdown. Gary, I hope that answers your question. So then let's see, Derek had said, I've been pondering adding my own electrical generation at our acreage. I have bias toward wind since it always seems to be windy out there, but it isn't always sunny in southern Manitoba, which overall gets a fair amount of sun. So cool.
Thank you, Derek.
All right, Justin has a couple questions.
Okay.
All right, Justin, here we go.
And we have to be careful on our time. We are already at 7:53. I can't believe it.
Okay, so you have to be real concise.
Okay, you too.
All right, what are some tools or supplies you will need or want at the workshop, like a wish list?
Oh, like a new Doosan Y-axis live tooling lathe. That would be amazing if that showed up on a truck one morning. But tooling for our CNC and fabrication needs. You know, Cat 40 tooling, Cat 40 plus tooling, things like that would be amazing. Carbide tooling, stuff like that, Justin.
Unless he was asking what kinds of tools you need where you have your turbine. Because the next question is turbine.
Sure. Okay.
Next question is, what type of maintenance is needed on these turbines from what you can anticipate, and what is the frequency of said maintenance?
Again, because we're still in testing, we have yet to do longevity testing like that. And the hope would be the way it's engineered, the way it's put together here, that we're talking very minimal, perhaps like greasing a few grease zerks once every 3 years or something like that. Making sure that if we don't use magnetic bearings when we go into production, but have needle bearings for our main thrust bearing, you would want to make sure that the oil pot is full, that the bearing is submerged in, things like that. So really, we're looking to keep this realistic as far as very, very minimal maintenance on the user, and all of the important parts are down at ground level. Yay! No climbing up 80 feet in the air to do this stuff. So as minimal as possible and as safe as possible. You just hit the button, furl it up the whole way, and then you can do the things you need. Hit the button, let it unfurl, and you're back in business. So keep it simple, keep it easy.
All right, last one that Justin asked. What are some of the general tasks the new CNC machinist and mechanical engineer will be working on?
Making the new, I just talked to the guys today that we've been interviewing all week, and the one guy's going to be working on the cam and the CNC literally of the parts as we iterate through the Mark III. Like I said, I don't know that I'm going to really get into making many of them, just probably a backup for Bucknell and maybe another one for us. But as we get into the Mark IV, we may make 8 or even 10 of those Mark IV units. So we will be making those parts. Derek, that's going to be what we are manufacturing and what, Justin, I'm sorry, what we're actually making with, as they hit the ground running and start learning and working with the company, it'll be literally making the parts. So we are building, we're testing, we're iterating, and then we're improving. And we're just doing those 4 things in a circle, very tight, very quick, iterative development and testing as we move through it. So the engineer will be helping me with the designing of those components. The CNC machinist will be working lockstep with us to manufacture and make those components. We'll all be working together to put it together, see what we like, see what we don't like, improve, and then go on to the next version. So very quick, simple, closed loop, kind of as we go through that iterative process.
Let's get Susan here.
Susan, go ahead.
More questions. Number 1, are you open to working with more universities here in the US? Number 2, how do we get on your notification list for upcoming seminars, videos, or email updates?
So the university question, no, not at this time. We are crazy busy right now with everything we have going on. I already had to turn away Villanova University and Thomas Jefferson University because we didn't have the bandwidth to work with them. So no, we do not want any more universities to work with right now. Maybe next year after we're done with these projects and get things under our belt, sure, then we'd open it up. But at the moment, no. How you get on the list would be to either go to our main harmonyturbines.com website and sign up for the mailing list right there. You'll see a link to sign up for our mailing list. Or if you're an investor, you're automatically added to the list whenever we have notifications come out, or
Facebook and LinkedIn.
Yep. And YouTube, you know, we put videos out on YouTube, but we really don't announce when things like this are going to be coming up. So becoming an investor or being on our mailing list would be 2 of the easiest ways.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Brian.
You're muted, I think.
He's on mute.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, have you sought any assistance either in funding or research from government? Specifically, we have the National Renewable Energy Lab out here in Golden, Colorado.
We have a number of people that have approached us over this past year saying, oh, you guys should do grants. You guys should do grants. And I say to each and every one of those people, love to. Would you like to write the grant proposal for us? We'll even give you a percentage of the, the total grant after it's awarded. No one's taken us up on that to this point, and there is no way that we, with our tiny little group, have the bandwidth to do a huge grant proposal. Like, there is entire teams dedicated to that at universities. So the questions out there, the invitation's open to anyone who wants us to help do a grant proposal, and if they're willing to do 95% of that work, I'll certainly fill in whatever info is needed, but we don't have the bandwidth to pursue grants at this time. They can be a very, very involved and convoluted process, but sure, grant money would be great. It's non-dilutive and doesn't require equity, but they're a big, complicated process. So long story short, I think with the funding we have now, with this raise, that we should be good to see ourselves through into a revenue positive state by the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. And that's really been the goal all this time. So would more money be nice? Of course, it's always, makes it a little bit better to have that extra padding, but I don't know that it's necessary at this juncture.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have one more. We're at closing time, but we have one more question that I think is important. So,
sure.
Well, not that the others aren't, but there aren't any other questions. So Stephen says, like the technical questions and background, but I would like to know more about business qualifications and development roadmap.
I'm not really sure what the question more about business qualifications means. Stephen, maybe you can type with some quick fingers and elaborate on what you mean there, because it's kind of a confusing question. Development roadmap is quite literally a very, very tight, simple, building, testing, iterating, changing, building, testing, iterate, change, build, test, iterate, change, probably 3 times, get us through the Mark III, the Mark IV, and the Mark V unit is the one that I am earmarking as the one I want to go into early low volume production with. So I want to have at least 2 more iterations under our belt before we open it up and say we are going to finally accept our pre-orders for our units. So the Mark V is my goal, to have that be our first unit that is open to the public to start putting orders in.
So, and on that question, when do you expect the Mark V to be in production? And so as far as roadmaps, I do work for a product development company. So it's kind of helpful to know, are you looking a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, what volumes do you hope for? And then as far as business qualifications, many a small businesses failed just because they got overrun with, as you said, you're wearing too many hats today, right? You gave that example when you talked about the grant. I completely agree with you. But so that is one of the pinch points, shall I say, that I've experienced with companies over the years, and that's my concern about investment. I love your idea. It's ingenious. I think it's a great invention. But I am, I kind of hope to see a little bit more about what the plan was, more on the business side rather than just on the technical side. These are great technical questions. I am an engineer by background, so they're all useful to me. But I do run a services business, so again, I have to be very, very metrics driven today. So those kind of metrics help me understand what you're planning on doing.
Right. Most of the time when people are talking, what's your business plan? They're asking people, well, what's your plan to go into the market, and how do you do your sales and your, partnerships so that you can get these units out there? Steve, we have a list of probably 600 people that have been waiting for these turbines. So quite literally, we already have a backlog that's a mile long of people who have been screaming for and waiting for units. It would take us 3 years to make all of the units that are in our backlog. So at this point, our main reason for focusing on the development and the technical side is so that we can get through that iterative testing, get to the end of 2023 when we hope to finally say, okay, now we will start opening up and taking pre-orders. Our low volume production numbers that we hope to be in would be probably on the order of, maybe 30 units a month in the very beginning that we would start making. if we have a small team of 10 to 12 people, we could easily do 30 units a month. And then as we grow, as we organically evolve, we would obviously need to get into a larger facility. We would need to hire some more people. And then we're going to take on partners who have been dying to come on and license our technology to make both larger units and smaller units, with us consulting them in the manufacturing and fabrication of those said units, both larger and smaller. So we want to be the first to market with our technology, start proving the technology, and then fulfilling these back orders that we've had for so long, unofficial back orders, so to speak, to get them out into the wild. And then we will start partnering with the groups that want to produce them both in larger and smaller sizes to start really fleshing out and getting into larger and larger quantities of these units. As we ourselves would move, I don't know, I could see even like 15, 20 people in our company being able to fulfill somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 units a month. You know, that's 1,200 a year coming out of our little tiny group right there, Harmony Turbines in Lebanon, PA, not even counting the other groups that we'd be partnering with to do larger quantities and larger and smaller sizes. So, you know, we've held everyone off up to this point because we cannot take on those partners yet until we're done with the testing. So at the end of 2023, early 2024, we want to start opening the floodgates, so to speak, both on production of our own units and then partnering with groups wanting to make these in mass.
So you're kind of saying, and you hope to deliver maybe 400 or 500 units in 2024, and that'd probably be your Mark V.
Yes, that is correct. And our pitch deck, I actually call that out. And how do I have that? I made some changes to the pitch deck the other day, so I'm apologize that I don't have the number off the top of my head. I had that at 50 units being delivered in 2023. So that would be probably the Mark IV units that would be out there, and 600 units in 2024 is how I call it out in our pitch deck.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think to answer a comment from Valentin and also a kind of a question from Mark about if we'll be doing all the manufacturing. Valentin was talking about how we're going to make this $100 million company. So it's, you know, we are, like Chris said, we're looking to make the partnerships with those who are better equipped to do the mass production. We, Chris and Cheryl, we want to be involved in the iterative stuff. Like once we have our partnerships and whatnot, we want to focus on how to make it better. How do we tweak it so that Harmony now works in this environment or that environment? And how do we deal with certain issues that have arisen? Like we want to focus on that and low volume production of the new iterations of what has come in that we're trying to fix.
Right, but we are not looking to be a 5,000 person company producing, you know, 10,000 of these units a month. There's no way that could happen.
Far better equipped to do that already.
Yeah.
That could very easily take this into their hands and scale it up, do the mass production, whatever the case might be. And that's where we believe the future of Harmony will be.
Yeah, a lot of, for our investors, one of the main things that we look as an exit strategy for our investors is once we have this birth to the point where we get it out there, the technology is proven, and we are now saying, you know, this is as good as we plan on making it before we hand it over to a much larger set of companies, better well equipped, as my wife said. We would not be at all opposed to selling the company to the proper custodian, the proper larger entities that would then agree to take this out to the masses. But there would have to be some very strict guidelines in those licensing agreements or those sales agreements that they would agree to have them out there in mass, you know, by, you know, 16 months or 18 months. And if they fail to follow through on those promises, then the rights would revert back to us that we could pass them on to another group or another entity. So we're not in this to get rich, even though, yes, it would be wonderful to give all of our investors a great return when we finally step back and say, okay, we're done taking this as far as we want, and all of our investors are smiling with huge smiles. But our goal is not to be multi-billionaires and wind turbine titans here. We want to get this technology out to the world and help change the minds and hearts of people around the world. So you've got to do that with a purpose that's beyond just profit if you want to really achieve that kind of a goal.
So we've answered all the chat questions, but we
Okay.
still have Shannon
All right.
here who
We'll
would
give
raise
Shannon
hand.
her one last shot, and then we are 10 minutes
We're
over
way
time
over time.
already. Sorry, guys, but obviously you can drop off whenever you want and, join us next week. Shannon, go ahead,
No,
fire
you're
away.
good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the question I had was, what was your estimate on how many preferred stocks you've issued at this point, and how much future fundraising are you looking at? And do you have a full winter testing facility? We get a lot of snow
I
right
see that.
outside
It's
Jackson.
beautiful.
Wow.
It's really
Yeah,
beautiful.
Wyoming gets a lot. And
Yeah.
I'll just listen to the answers. Thank you.
Sure. I'm not sure we're allowed to give specific numbers. You'd actually have to go to our crowdfunding site on Start Engine to see the specific numbers of where we're at. But we've given away, we've roughly achieved 2/3 of our crowdfunding goal at this moment, or maybe even 3/4 of our crowdfunding goal almost at this moment. So it calls it out in there how many shares are offered in this round, and then you can just do simple math to see about how much we've released. The question about whether we're going to do any future crowdfunding is no, we do not want to do any future crowdfunding. So if you want to get in, if you want to own a piece of Harmony Turbines, you've got until the end of this campaign to be guaranteed a spot. After that, there is no guarantees. And people have asked us time and again, well, when are you going to go public? I don't know that we want to go public. That's a nightmare in and of itself. So I don't think we're ever going to look at going public as a tactic or a strategy. It's not on my radar as something I want to do or a feather in my cap. No way. That's some crazy stuff way down the road, and we don't need to go public to take Harmony to the public. So if people want to get in, if they want to be part owners and share in this adventure with us, then this crowdfunding raise going on right now is when you want to do it. Because I do not have any guarantees that we'll ever need to do another crowdfunding round again after this. Winter testing, send us an email, Shannon, because we need to keep track of people who want to be early beta testers in various environments. Put in there some verbiage of what you've got, what you're offering, and your experience with renewables so that we can help make informed decisions when the time is right. But yeah, winter cold weather testing models will be a thing when we're ready for that. So thank you. Okay. At this point, we're 10 minutes over. You have all been very gracious for sticking along in this journey. And again, as we always say, thank you to everyone for following with us, for supporting us, for believing in what we're doing, and for the positive reinforcement that we get back from our community each and every day. It's almost amazing to see the outpouring of good intentions, goodwill, and support that's coming from our community. We are now around 45,000 followers on our various platforms, which is pretty amazing, between WeFunder and Start Engine and YouTube and TikTok and Twitter, and I'm forgetting LinkedIn.
There's a bunch.
There's a bunch. Facebook. We're about 45,000 people strong. So that's a really, really interesting number. We could even be around 50 now, because that was like 4 months ago that we did that count. So that's amazing, guys. To grow from this little tiny nugget that was down in my basement to where we are today is saying something. And we now want to do our part and take it to the next level. So this year we're going to be heads down. We're going to be doing everything we can to push through the iterative testing, to get the results out there, to finally put the performance and the coefficients of power and the torque and all of the good juicy data that everyone's been waiting for, to finally start putting that out there and publishing it, and then get other sites where we put our turbines up and start corroborating that data and cross-referencing that data. So this year, 2023, should be a really exciting year for Harmony Turbines, and you have all made that possible, our supporters, our followers, and our investors. So thank you. We'll do another webinar probably next week. I think we'll just do another Monday 7 p.m. thing. So we'll put that out there and mark it down. But this went really, really well for our first one. So we had, I think, 48 people was the highest number I saw.
Yeah, 48, 49.
Yeah, so that's awesome. I don't know if we hit 50, but that's okay. Our license allows us to have up to 150 people in here. So we should be good. I will close things out and just say thank you to everyone for attending tonight and for following along with us.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, you guys are great. They were really great questions that you had tonight. So we appreciate your engagement and your support, and keep in touch.
It's pretty cool where this is going. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, pretty cool, guys. So thank you. Thank you to everyone, and we'll catch you next week. Take care, guys.
Bye. You have to end the
I have to end the, okay, wait. I have to end both the recording and the transcript.